Hi, this is Maggie from Design Code Debug Repeat. Welcome to the channel. If you're here because you want to learn to program in Java, you're in the right place. This is the 11th video in the Introductory Programming in Java full course and the second video of Lesson 3, Branching Structures in Java. In the last video, we looked at a Java program with an if-else statement. Depending on the value in a variable, one branch or the other of the program would execute. We also briefly discussed the Boolean data type and the relational operators. In this video, we'll go into more detail about Boolean expressions and both the relational and logical operators that you can use to create them. Let's get right into it. This is our table of relational operators from the last video. Relational operators can be used to compare numeric expressions. Remember that expressions are literals, variables, or literals or variables combined with operators such as plus and mod, or functions such as square root and pow. So if I have variables called x and y, I can write an expression like x times 2 greater than math.square root y, for example. You can compare integer types to integer types, floating point types to floating point types, integer types to floating point types, and characters to floating point types, characters, and integers. You will not use the relational operators to compare strings, however. We will have a separate video on how to compare strings, and I'll go into the interesting reason that relational operators will give you odd, difficult to debug results if you try to use them to compare strings. So as a quick review, remember that you put an expression on the left of one of these operators and an expression on the right. If the operator is composed of two characters, like equals equals, not equals, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to, you do not put a space between the two characters. And importantly, your entire expression will evaluate to a Boolean result, true or false. Do you remember JShell? I have JShell open here because it's a quick way to see how various expressions evaluate. Recall that a literal evaluates to literally itself. So if I type the literal int 5, for example, JShell evaluates that to 5, literally what I typed. And if I type the literal string hello world, well, that string evaluates to literally hello world. The literal character A evaluates to A. There are only two literal Boolean values, true and false. They are written with lowercase t and lowercase f. You will hardly ever need these literals, but let's ask JShell to evaluate them. I will type the literal true. It's a literal Boolean, not a literal string, so I do not put any quotes around it. It's just as if I were typing a literal integer. JShell says true back to me, and the same for false. JShell says false. Now let's ask JShell to evaluate some relational expressions that we know are true. Let's ask it, is 10 greater than 5? Notice JShell evaluates that expression to true. So if I put that expression after an if, then the conditional code would execute. I can write if, open paren, 10 greater than 5, close paren. Remember, you need parentheses around the expression. And then in curly braces, I'll write system out print line 10 is greater than 5. Close curly brace. And when I press enter, the condition evaluated to true, and so the conditional code executed. If I press up arrow to get the expression back and change that to 10 less than 5, the condition evaluated to false, and so the conditional code did not execute. JShell prints nothing. And let's just create a more complicated expression. I'll define int x equals 25. And then if math.square root x equals 5, system out print line 5 is the square root of 25. And JShell responds by printing the message. In this Boolean expression, the left side, math.square root x, is evaluated and compared to the right side, the literal 5. You do actually have to be careful, though, when comparing the values of floating point numbers. Usually you will not use equals equals because of round-off error. It's better practice to test that the floating point result of a computation is within an acceptable threshold of the correct answer. There are 3 more operators that we can use to create an expression that evaluates to true or false, and those are and, or, and not. And is written as 2 ampersands together, no space between. Or is written as 2 pipes or vertical bars. You'll find this symbol over the Enter key on your keyboard with no space between. And then not is written as the exclamation point. The operands to and, or, and not are Boolean expressions, expressions that evaluate to true or false, such as the ones we've been writing in the parentheses after if. We use and when we want to check for a value falling within a range, or if we need 2 expressions to evaluate to true before we proceed with an if statement. We use or when we want to check for a value falling outside of a range, or if we want either one or the other or both of 2 expressions to be true before proceeding with an if statement. We use not when we want to negate a Boolean variable. You can use not to negate any Boolean expression, but I would strongly encourage you to use it only to negate a Boolean variable. We will talk about that more in a future video. Now, because and, or, and not take Boolean operands, and because there are only 2 literal Boolean values, true and false, we can enumerate or list out all possible combinations of the operands to and, or, and not. This enumeration is called a truth table. Here we have the truth table for and. The left 2 columns are all of the possible values of the operands listed out. There are only 4 possible combinations: true, 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 false, false, true, false, false. And you can see that an and expression will only evaluate to true when the 2 operands both evaluate to true. Now for or, the combinations of operands are the same, of course, but for or, the expression will only evaluate to false if both operands are false. And not takes only 1 operand. You put not before the operand and it negates it, turns true to false, and false to true. These all work roughly the way you would expect from natural language. For example, to be President of the United States, you have to be a natural-born citizen, and you have to be at least 35 years old. If either or both are false, you are not a natural-born citizen, or you are not at least 35 years old, or both, then you cannot be president. You can only run for president if both are true. For or, let's think about reasons you might want to jump into a swimming pool. You might jump in because you're hot, or you might jump in because you want to swim. Or you might jump in for both reasons. You're hot and you want to swim. In any of those cases, you're going to jump into the pool. So either one or the other or both. And the or evaluates to true. Let's write a few expressions with and or in JShell to get the mechanics down, and then we'll look at practical applications in another video. Let's define int temperature equals 90. And let's say there's a scale of wanting to swim from 1 to 5. Let's define int wants swim equals 2. Then we can write an if statement, if temperature greater than 80, let's say, or wants swim greater than or equal to 3. You see how that's written? A complete Boolean expression on the left, the or operator, and a complete Boolean expression on the right. That will evaluate to true if either temperature greater than 80 evaluates to true, wants swim greater than or equal to 3 evaluates to true, or if both evaluate to true. So let's write open curly brace, system out print line, jump into the pool, close curly brace. And is it going to print or not? We have a 90 in temperature and a 2 in wants swim. Temperature greater than 80 is therefore true, and wants swim greater than or equal to 3 is false. True or false evaluates to true, so it will print our message. Let's press enter, and it does. Let's write an and expression. I'm going to define int age equals 76. I'm thinking of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I'll define Boolean natural born equals false. So there's a Boolean variable for you. Notice the data type is Boolean, and that can only be set to true or false. Now let's write if age greater than or equal to 35 and operator natural born. That might look a little weird. You might have been inclined to write natural born equals true. You don't want to do that though, because natural born all by itself is a Boolean expression, just like age all by itself is an int expression. Remember, literals and variables are very simple expressions. There is no reason to do the extra work of comparing that to true. And in fact, doing that comparison can lead to some difficult to debug errors. So let's put in our curly braces, system out print line, you can run for president. There is actually one other requirement, and you can put another and here, but let's stick to one and for now. So how's this one going to evaluate? Will our message be printed? Well, age greater than or equal to 35 is going to evaluate to true because age is 76. But natural born is false. So that side of the and evaluates to false. So we have true and false, which is false. And when I press enter, our message isn't printed. To summarize, you have now seen most of the operators that can be used to create Boolean expressions. You've seen all of the operators that you need, except for special cases. These include the relational operators, equal, not equal, less than, greater than, less than or equal, and greater than or equal, and the logical operators and, or, and not. I have included an auto-graded exercise in the description of this video that you can use to practice with the expressions we wrote in JShell. If you get stuck, come back and watch the video. When you're feeling confident with the concepts in this video, you're ready to move on. As always, have fun and keep coding.